second. Okay, and then I'm gonna go. Let me see.
While you're doing what you're doing, are you?
We're live too. Just to
Oh,
let you know, we're live.
hi, everybody.
I gotta do edit audience because that's something that I have to make it just weird. I have to change it from friends to public. And then if
Okay.
you want to share on your page, you can.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
You like and then let me go back to my Zoom. All right. And then yeah. So yeah, you can hit this the share and you can share it on your page and we'll be
Okay. Do I right now or you mean
yeah,
later?
you right now, huh? Yeah.
Oh, right now.
Yeah, we
Okay.
are live. We are live, y'all. We live.
Okay. And I can hit share from your page to mine. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Nice. Okay. Let me see if I can look that up. So do you want me to just present through my slides or did you want me
Yeah, I
to?
want to talk for a minute and then we
Okay.
can pull that up.
Got it.
Okay. All right, everyone, whoever tunes in, if you tune in now, if you tune in later, welcome. It's Tuesday. You know, on Tuesdays I do real estate. I want to bring different topics to everyone. Um, because so much has changed. Right now, real estate is a whole different ball game right now. So I just want to bring value. That's the reason why I'm doing these Tuesday sessions. So, go back, to my lives and everything. We did an amazing home inspection, teaching you guys about home inspections and everything. And, I want, whoever's tuning in now or later, I want you guys to comment, like, what would you guys like to hear about? So, um, now oh my goodness, I've known this lady since KW, we use a KW, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, I've been,
Quite a long time ago. Yes. When I
yeah,
was in Elk Grove, I think, which
yeah,
was a long time ago.
and you guys were only 21, okay?
Right.
So, but I got Jana Reyes here, okay? And she was a former realtor. So for how many years were you doing real estate?
For 21 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
see, and I've been in the game going on 23. So, so she knows, like, how things used to be. You went through the crash too with me, huh? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. All the short sells, all the REO. Yep.
The fun stuff that y'all still ask about to this day. Okay.
Yes.
And, I may have to get my girl Serena loud. I think it's still loud. I know she got married,
Yeah.
but
Serena's on
I
it.
might have to bring her on, talk about the hood homes and stuff.
There you go. That's a great topic, actually. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. You should bring her on.
Well, HUD homes, they're not like how they used to be. They're not
No.
cheap, cheap, like, people think they're real cheap. Some of them are higher than the ones next door to you and stuff.
Right.
It's crazy. But there's a thing called 1031 exchange that I really wanted to bring to you guys tonight because that too has changed. And, when I went to, a meeting and, Jana was presenting that, I learned a lot of things that have changed. So I'm going to step back and I'm going to let her go ahead and, introduce herself. And she's got some slides for you, to look at some a presentation and stuff. And she's going to let you know about 1031 exchange. And I would chime in once in a while to ask some questions.
Awesome. Okay, and I'm trying to see, um, working on trying to share my
Okay.
screen here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Let's see how this looks, if it's coming through for you. Is it good? Can you see it
Yep.
okay?
Mhm.
Perfect. All right. So thanks, Alita, for having me on your
Thanks for coming
channel.
on at 7 p.m. at night.
Yeah, I love it. So this is great because a lot of, it's getting dark outside. That means a lot of agents are at home and hopefully they're tuning in to get some information about 1031 exchange. So I'm excited to share with both the realtors out there, real estate community, but then also investors that are at home trying to learn a little bit more about this tax deferral strategy. That's really what the 1031 exchange tax code is. It is a tax deferral opportunity that allows an investor of real estate, so somebody holding real estate for the purpose of investment, trade, or business, can actually sell their real estate, channel the proceeds through a qualified intermediary, which is what our company is, Asset Preservation Incorporated, channel those funds through a qualified intermediary, and then reinvest or redeploy those proceeds into new real estate, a new piece of real estate held for trade, business, or investment. And if they do it that way, in that fashion, they're actually not realizing the gain and recapturing the depreciation at that point of sale. Instead, they're able to defer that taxation and kind of kick that tax can down the road, which allows somebody to really snowball their investments, all the money they grew in that first property, into the new properties. And for some people, they just hold on to their real estate, they just never sell it. If you don't sell your real estate, you're not experiencing a gain, you're not experiencing that depreciation recapture. But the reality is that a lot of investors that grow equity in one property have new plans for that equity, right? They want to redeploy it into a different asset class type, a different market, maybe more than one property. So they're selling one and buying multiple. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is all of the flexibility around 1031 exchange and all the opportunities that it can bring a person. Now, I do want to make it clear that I am not a tax advisor, and none of the things that I'm going to talk about tonight should be construed as tax advice. It is critical that an investor, before they sell their real estate, they talk with their own tax advisor, because every investor has their own set of facts and circumstances around their tax profile, right? They might have some passive losses that offset gain. They might have done a cost segregation strategy that expedited depreciation. So there's a lot of nuance to taxation, and we at API, we guide people through the exchange process. We educate them on the exchange process, but what we don't do is taxes. So people, before they exchange, do want to talk to their specific tax advisor about their set of facts and circumstances to better understand what the implications to either selling or deferring might be. So as mentioned before, I'm the VP of Business Development over at Asset Preservation, and we've done over 200,000 exchanges nationwide. We've been in the business for over 35 years, or this is our 35th year, excuse me. And me personally, as mentioned before, I was a realtor for a long time, but I also have been in the asset management world and the education field. And so this is sort of my wheelhouse, to get out there and teach people about using this tax strategy in their real estate business, or their real estate journey, if they're just kind of collecting on the side for either a hobby or just some wealth building. So as I mentioned, obviously, if you hold on to your real estate forever, you're not experiencing a gain and there's no taxation to be paid. But if you'd like to maybe change the holdings in your real estate portfolio, 1031 exchange can allow you to do that with that tax deferral. The alternative is just to simply sell and pay the piper, right? Do your patriotic duty and pay all that tax. So let's talk a little bit about what the taxation actually looks like if a person were to simply cash out of their real estate. So let's see, I was looking for a slide that, here we go. this is sort of a story of, do you think we have people on here that are outside of California, Alita, or do you think everybody's, yeah,
Yeah, I got friends from all over on
from
Facebook.
all over? Okay, so this is gonna, I kind of wish that I would have pulled up a different slide that would have been a little bit more general. Let me see if I have that in this deck. If I don't, I can. You know what? I don't. But so let me talk more generally about taxation before I get into this example, just because this is a California specific example. So let me just talk a little bit about taxation. So when somebody exchanges out of real or doesn't exchange, they rather just cash out of their real estate. When somebody does that, they are potentially experiencing up to 4 levels of taxation on the cash out. Okay. So same thing is true if they're deferring the taxation through a 1031 exchange, then they are potentially delaying or deferring up to 4 levels of taxation. So the taxes when you cash out look like this. First and foremost, there is depreciation that's recaptured and taxed at 25%. Okay, so part of that amount of depreciation is dependent on how long the person's owned the property. So there is a typical depreciation schedule for residential of 27 and a half years. For commercial, it's near 40 years, a depreciation schedule. However, a lot of investors do work with their tax advisors to expedite that schedule to take advantage of depreciation on a more rapid schedule so that they get those tax benefits faster. So this is why, as a realtor, yourself or myself or any other realtor doesn't want to dabble in trying to do people's tax calculations because we don't really know if somebody has done one of those studies to expedite depreciation, right? So this individual would go to their taxpayer or tax advisor and try to get some information about, hey, what depreciation will actually be recaptured in tax based on what I've done, the schedule I've taken, right? So there's depreciation recapture, which is taxed at 25%. Then there's capital gains tax on a federal level, which can range anywhere from 15 to 20%, depending on the party's tax bracket. Okay, so again, this is why they want to talk to their tax advisor specifically to understand their bracket. Okay, and then the next thing is net investment income tax, which doesn't apply to everyone, but it does apply to some taxpayers. And again, speaking to a tax advisor who knows a party's tax profile will be able to determine if they are subject to that taxation. But if they are, it's another 3.8%. Okay. And then there's also state capital gains tax, and that depends on where the property is located. So some of the states in the US have zero for capital gains on a state level, right?
Oh,
But there are other states that experience a much higher rate of taxation. In fact, in California, where I reside and where Alita resides, if you sell investment property here in California, the taxation can be as high as 14.4%. Previously, it was 13.3. It just recently went up to as high as 14.4. So, long story short, is the taxes, the magnitude of the tax implications of just simply cashing out of investment real estate can be significant. And so this is why going and getting the math done to make the determination, does it make sense to do an exchange? Does it make sense to cash out? Or maybe even do a partial exchange. When you do a partial exchange, you're reinvesting some of the net proceeds, but not all of them. So the portion that is not reinvested, we call that boot. I'll get into that a little bit in a few minutes. But this is a tax strategy that allows a taxpayer to kind of kick all that taxation I just mentioned down the road so that they can reinvest a larger sum into the new properties. And that way they could potentially grow a larger real estate portfolio in doing that. So that's really the technique that is being employed. Now, a lot of people say, well, at some point I'm going to cash out, right? If that's the case, if someday you do cash out, yes, you're going to be experiencing the recapture on the original property, the property exchange into potentially the next property, which is why a lot of times people swap till they drop. Okay. Exchange, 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 die. A lot of people do that because then when they pass away, provided that the tax code hasn't changed, and right now it currently states that if you pass on a piece of real estate to your heirs, the heirs have an opportunity to take what's called a step up in basis. And so that that means that they're receiving the real estate at market value of today, the date of death, rather than when mom and dad or grandparents or whomever is leaving the property to them, their original basis. And so if mom and dad bought the property originally for $100,000, but at the date of death, it's worth 500, and then the kids have received it at the 500, if they sell it right away, they don't have a gain. If they hold on to it for another decade, then when they sell it, they're doing a tax calculation from their new basis, which was the 500 to the point of sale. So again, this is all assuming that the tax code doesn't change from this certain course in the future. And so what we're talking about today, this is the truth today, but if someone holds on to real estate for 5 years or 10 years, they'll want to talk to their tax advisor at that point to see how the tax code applies to their real estate at that point in time.
And that
Um,
means they cannot live in it. It's just totally
Good,
investment.
yeah, good point. So this is called a like kind exchange, and a lot of people get very confused what that terminology means. And the reason that it's called like kind is back when 1031 first rolled out, which was 1929. There were a lot of different types of exchange. You could exchange, farm equipment for farm equipment. You could exchange real estate for real estate. You could exchange classic cars for classic cars. Well, all of these personal property exchanges have been eliminated from the tax code. There's only one exchange left, and that is real estate held for trade, business, or investment for other real estate held for trade, business, or investment. So it has to be held for investment purposes. This is not applicable to your primary residence. This is also not applicable to what we call as stock and trade real estate. What stock and trade real estate is real estate that is inventory, right? It's the purpose of it is to turn over and resell. So if you are an investor who's flipping real estate or you're buying to build to resell, then you're also excluded from using the 1031 exchange tax code. So those parties don't get the tax deferral. Even if they're selling it and going into another property, their business is to turn over real estate for profit. Rather, this is just applicable to those investors who are holding it for investment purposes. So a lot of our clients who are doing exchanges, they are people who are landlords or they own property. They're using someone else to do the landlording for them. So they hire a PM, a property manager to do the dealings with the tenants, but they're holding that real estate for the purpose of investment. Sometimes we have people who are holding it for trade or business purposes. So for example, say you had a dentist. The dentist owns the building that they operate their business from. And so they are actually using that for business purposes, but they own the real estate. So when they want to maybe trade up to a bigger building because their practice has grown, they might purchase another property using the proceeds from the existing property so that they can and they'll channel the funds again through a 1031 exchange so that they can defer the taxation and they can use all the money grown in the first property for the ownership of the second property. So even though they're occupying it, they're not occupying it as a primary residence, they're occupying it for business purposes. So that's allowable by the tax code.
Now, you
Yeah.
just said about, if the parents, pass away and the children get it. So if the parents they were living in the property and something happens and it gets passed to the children can do a 1031 exchange, or did I misunderstand that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So it depends on the purpose of, so let's just say it depends on the purpose of the property, whether or not those children would ever consider a 1031 exchange, right? If those kids just received the property, recently, the date of death was recent, there'd probably be no reason to do a 1031 exchange, even if it was an investment property, right? Because if the parents had it as an investment property, but then the parents just passed away, the kids are receiving it at today's market value. And so they don't have an old basis from the parents' ownership that they need to worry about the gain from. Instead, they're receiving it at today's market value. So even if it's an investment property, they would get that step up in basis, provided their parents didn't leave them too much money. So that's where it starts getting into a tax advisory position, because these kids should go to their tax advisor or the trust tax advisor or the estate's tax advisor, whoever's doing the taxation analysis, to see like is there any reason there might be a gain on this property? And then they can decide what an exchange makes sense. Oftentimes it doesn't because they've received it at the step up in basis. Now, if it was the parent's primary residence, that's a whole other discussion because primary residence, there's exemption associated with that under the 121 tax code. And there could be a step up in basis related to that as well if both parents have passed and the kids are receiving it. So these are all situations that are there's so much nuance to it that every time someone sells any real estate, whether they lived in it or a family member lived in it or it was an investment property, there should always be a tax discussion before somebody sells any property. But 1031 is very specific to investment property held for trade, business, or investment. Now, with that being said, most people, as I mentioned, have rental properties, but some people just have raw land, right? And raw land can be an investment as well because you're not living on the raw land, right? So you can hold a piece of vacant land for investment and say a person's held it for a number of years and now they don't want this piece of land anymore. They'd like to sell it and they would like to defer the taxes and reinvest in either a different piece of land, a duplex, an office building, an industrial building. They can reinvest in literally any kind of real estate as long as that real estate is going to be held for trade, business, or investment.
So
So
realtors heard that. So back in the days, it used to be like for like, right?
yeah,
Kind
well,
of right?
yeah. So it actually has always been real estate for real estate, but it's been so confusing for people because it used to include all of those other types of exchanges. So we had farm equipment for farm equipment. We had, fine art for fine art. And so because of that, all of those different distinctions, there were a lot of people, and still to this day, lots of investors of land who think that if they exchange, they have to go land for land. And that's not actually the case. It is literally any type of real estate as long as it's held for business, trade, or investment. And it must be in the United States. So sometimes we get calls of people that they say, I want to sell in the US, like I own something in California and I want to reinvest in Paris. You can't do that. You can only exchange into either the US or a territory that follows the same tax code. So Guam, for example, that's a territory that actually follows the same tax code. And so we are able to do exchanges from Guam to US or US to Guam.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me get into, since we kind of jumped over to like kind, I kind of love this slide because I feel like it really gives people kind of a more broad understanding of what this like kind is. So if you owned, a vineyard, right? And you wanted to sell your vineyard and you wanted to exchange into an office building, you can do that. If you own mineral rights, which mineral rights are just rights to, minerals within a land, you can actually sell that because that really is a deed. You can sell that and reinvest in, 3 office buildings or, 2 condos. It really is very flexible. So you can go out of one and go into multiple. You can sell multiple and go into one as long as it's real estate held for trade, business, or investment. So I should show you the timeline associated with this because a lot of times people get super excited about all the flexibility around exchange. And exchange is very flexible in terms of the asset class type, in terms of the market, in terms of the number of assets sold or purchased. There's a lot of flexibility. Now, here's where there's no flexibility whatsoever. Okay, that's on the timetable. So when you're doing an exchange, you must reinvest the proceeds of the sale, the property that you're selling within 180 days after close of escrow of that sale. Okay. So there is a clock associated with this strategy. Okay. And it is not a flexible clock. You get exactly 180 days post close of the sale of the property you are relinquishing. So whatever you're selling, it's not during the escrow, it's when the escrow closes. From that date that it closes, that triggers 180 days to reinvest the money. And the first 45 of the 180 days is the identification period. So it's not an additional 180 after 45. It is a total of 180, 45 to identify unambiguously what it is that you're going to buy during the 180 days. So what happens is a lot of the realtors out there, they don't want to wait until the clock starts ticking on them with their clients. They want to be proactive, right? So if they list a property for sale for this exchanger and the exchanger locks in a buyer and now they're in escrow for 30 days, rather than waiting for that deal to close to start shopping for a replacement property, they'll go out and start writing offers contingent on the close of escrow on the property they're relinquishing. And that way they get a jump on it, right? And so then hopefully they've identified something even before the clock's ticking. They might even have time to do some due diligence, do some inspections and things. And that way, once they really have the time crunch started, they already know what they're buying. And that takes a lot of pressure off of these investors. Okay. But you have until midnight of the 45th day to submit your identification form. The identification form does not get sent to the IRS. It actually comes to the QI, but the QI has to have it on file in case we get audited by the IRS at any time. So we supply the exchanger a copy of what's called the identification form. And that form has to be filled out by the exchanger and submitted to us no later than midnight of the 45th day. A lot of our exchangers send it to us sooner than that, but that is the drop dead date. Okay, midnight of the 45th day. And it has to be signed and it has to unambiguously list the properties that they're potentially going to purchase. Okay. Sometimes people will not only identify, they'll actually even close on the new property within that time period. And that's, kind of in an ideal world. Talk about taking the pressure off, right? But some people haven't done that. They just identify and then they use the rest of the timeline to actually close escrow on the replacement property. Now, there are a few different ways to identify replacement properties. So I'm going to show you that in a second. But before I do, I just kind of want you to look at this flow chart because you see up at the top, we call them the taxpayer. Sometimes we call them the exchanger. Even though they're going for tax deferral, they're really still a taxpayer doing this strategy, right? So the taxpayer is selling. When they do that, in the contract, because our job as the intermediary, we're a qualified intermediary, right? We're doing two things. One is we are drafting exchange documents that are legally binding documents that actually are an assignment of the contract. So we're stepping into the contract between the taxpayer, our client, and the buyer of the property that they're selling, they're relinquishing, right? So there's a set of documents that get signed, and then there's an account that gets set up called the intermediary account. And that account is going to catch the proceeds of the sale because if the money comes to the taxpayer, even on paper, they are paying taxes. They are not getting tax deferral. So the money has to go into the account we have established for them. So we actually do a direct deed. So the deed goes directly from the taxpayer to the buyer of that property, but the funds do not. The funds channel from the buyer into the QI account. We hold it there until we know what they're purchasing on the other end, and then we channel the funds to the title company closing on the purchase of the replacement property. So and then, of course, when that happens, there's a direct deed from the seller of the property that the taxpayer is purchasing. And then the funds, as I mentioned, go from the QI account to the title company closing that deal. So that's what that looks like, that channeling of funds. The identification must be made in writing. It must be unambiguous. It must be done by the 45th day. So here are the ways that a party can actually fill that form out. And this is really important because this is also not flexible. You have to use one of these three ways to identify unambiguously, and you cannot change your list for any reason whatsoever after midnight of the 45th day. So the most common way to fill this form out is called the three property rule. It's where the taxpayer identifies up to three properties, any fair market value, anywhere in the US, as long as it's real estate held for trade, business, or investment. Okay. If they want to list more than three properties, they can do that. It'll take them to the next rule. It's called the 200% rule. And that simply says that if the taxpayer lists unlimited number of properties, the fair market value of all of those properties added together cannot exceed 200% of the property that they sold. So If that taxpayer just sold a property, they relinquished something that was worth $1 million, then that means that they can have more than three properties on their list, but it's now going to be capped at $2 million fair market value for the whole list. So it really depends on what are they selling and what market are they shopping in, whether they're going to have a more flexible list by sticking with the three properties, or if they can push to the 200% rule to get maybe more options on that list. The last rule is called the 95% rule. It's very rarely used. And the reason is because if the party wants more than three properties and they want to exceed 200% limit on the fair market value, they can use that last rule, the 95% rule, but it does say that the taxpayer can identify an unlimited list, but then they have to close on 95% of the fair market value of the entire list, which is very risky in real estate because Alita and I both know not everything closes. So you don't really want to commit yourself to 95% of any list, right? Um, Let me just mention that if a party is using exchange for consolidation purposes, say they are selling three properties and now they'd like to take the proceeds of all three of them and reinvest into a single property. We see a lot of people doing that. Maybe as they were investing initially, they were buying pretty small, inexpensive properties. Now that they've grown equity in those properties, they'd like to sell them and maybe reinvest in a much bigger, better property. And so they need the proceeds from multiple properties in order to afford this bigger, better property. We see people doing that a lot. Maybe they'll go into a big triple net lease kind of commercial building or something like that. It's super important to know that if you want to sell three properties or more, the timeline that I mentioned before, that 180-day clock, it actually kicks off at the close of escrow of the first property, not the last.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. So it's super important to try to close those deals as close together as possible because what you don't want to have happen is the first one closes and now you're in that clock and you don't know if you're going to have money from the other two deals. And so you're not really sure what your budget is for the replacement property, right? So trying to pull those together as close together as possible can really save a lot of stress for the realtor and the exchanger alike,
So
right?
that's why sometimes in the MLS, in the private agent notes, it says, or sometimes I think even in the public notes, it'll say also with such and such MLS number, all three needs to be sold together.
Yeah, you're
So
right.
that's the reason why. Okay.
That's a big reason why we see a lot of people doing that where they will reference other properties because their goal is to sell them all together. And it's certainly easier if you're selling to all to one party, right? So if you're selling three properties all to one party, they're probably trying to close them all at the same time too. But if you're not lucky enough to find one party to buy all three and now you have three different buyers buying these properties, you're hurting cats, right? And so it's very important to try to build in some extension rights and try to get it so that you can dovetail those closings together successfully, right? So here's the opposite scenario. Look at this. This is when somebody's selling one and they want to use the proceeds from that one sale and redeploy it into multiple properties. Okay. So we see a lot of this where somebody has built a lot of equity into one property and now they want to build a bigger real estate portfolio. And so they'll sell that one property and then they'll use the proceeds as down payment on two or three or four properties so that are taking out maybe debt service loans. Right now they have multiple channels of rental income. They have multiple properties with depreciation schedules, which gives them a lot more tax benefits, right? And then they also have multiple properties that are growing with the market over time. And so this is a fantastic way to build wealth. I really encourage people who've already grown equity in one property to look at what is the return on equity? Like, do you really want to have 600, $700,000 worth of equity sitting in one property, or would it make more sense to use that as down payments on multiple properties to grow some wealth? So I love to see it when people use it for this purpose. Now, with that being said, all of these properties in this story right here, where you've got three properties that you're closing, they all have to close in the 180 days in order to use the funds from the QI account in a tax deferred manner, right? So if this person's, lucky enough to close the first two by the 180th day, but maybe the last one fails to close and there's still funds sitting in this QI account that haven't been used yet by the 180th day, those funds are going to be returned to that taxpayer and they're going to be paying taxes on anything left in that QI account. If they still want to purchase that third property, they can certainly do that, right? But they're doing it with funds that will be taxed because they did not get the tax deferral on that last property.
Do they have to put a certain amount of money down when they buy? And I mean, especially like if they're buying like three, does it matter with you guys or no?
So it doesn't matter from an exchange standpoint. It'll certainly matter from a lending standpoint. So if somebody is contemplating this scenario that I just mentioned, where they're going to maybe take out three new debt service loans, right? Before they kick off the sale of the first property, it would be wise to sit down with the lender and make sure that they're going to qualify for three new loans, right? To make sure they understand how much down payment needs to go into each one of those loans to have a successful closing, right? Because that they might think that they're going to buy three, but the lender might say, hey, your debt to income ratio or your credit score or whatever doesn't support that. You can buy two, right? Or they might say you could buy one, or hey, don't do this at all. You can't qualify right now, right? So getting your ducks in a row by talking to your tax advisor and talking to a lender and really looking at the future, like what's really the goal here and can I meet it before you start having a ticking clock on you is wise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, y'all. Yes, it is. Always talk to a lender and a tax person.
Always. Yeah. Yeah, always. And I kind of already covered this about what we're doing. We're doing an assignment. Let me talk a little bit about QIs in general, because again, this is a qualified intermediary. That's what we are at Asset Preservation Incorporated. And we've been in business, as I mentioned before, 35 years. We're one of the oldest exchange companies in the business, in the industry. Our team has a huge amount of expertise. A lot of the people that we have in our company have actually been there for 20, 30 years. So we've got a lot of knowledge in this company. But what I really like to mention is that the QI industry is actually an unregulated industry. And a lot of the consumers out there don't actually realize that. They think we're all the same.
And what's
And
QI? Can you let people know?
QI stands for qualified intermediary. So a qualified intermediary is required by the tax code. So you must have a QI, a third party that steps into the contract and catches the funds and holds those funds until they're redeployed in the next property. Okay. So there are other QI companies out there. There's many of them. We're one of the oldest ones out there, but there are others, right?
You're the new
And
Bill.
what was that?
You're the new Bill because
I'm the new Bill. Bill,
yeah.
right. Bill was with asset preservation for 26 years. I'm the new Bill. I took over for him. And what I want to mention is that some of our competitors are great. Others of our competitors are not employing nearly the security measures that we are. So at API, we actually are a subsidiary of Steward Information Services Corporation, which is a publicly traded company. And that company actually signs a letter of assurance on every transaction that we do. We use E&O insurance. We use segregated accounts. We use certified ID on all the wire transfers that we do. So we're really protecting the consumer's funds at every pass. We have some very well drafted exchange documents. And so we really take our business seriously. This is all we do is 1031 exchange, but we do every kind of exchange. We do the typical delayed exchange, which is the most common. We do simultaneous, where the sale and the purchase are happening almost concurrently. We do reverse exchange, where we might have a party that wants to buy first and sell second. We do improvement exchanges. We do split treatment exchanges. We do we do every type of exchange, and we're a national company. So our headquarters is in Northern California, which is where my office is in Roseville. Okay, but we have an East Coast hub in New York. We have satellites sprinkled about the country with representatives out there teaching the public and the real estate community about exchange. And so we can help people no matter where their property is located with this accommodation service. But I just want people to know that we protect the funds, and not all of our competitors use those same measures to protect the funds. And so with us, we are guaranteeing that these parties, your funds will be there when you're ready to reinvest them at the back end of the exchange. And I think that's really important to know. We're very competitive with our fee structure, and we have a staff that is so experted in this field that they can help answer any of those complicated questions, because we definitely see some very complicated exchanges, and we have a team that can support all the answers to those questions that an exchanger might have. So I definitely would encourage any exchanger to reach out to us. And you can follow us on YouTube. We have some great educational pieces there, on Facebook and LinkedIn. Here's my direct contact information for anybody who's looking to set up an exchange or do a consultation. I'm happy to do that with anyone. I'm sure you have some other questions, or maybe you have people on here that are asking questions. Do we have
Oh,
any
no, everybody's
questions?
being kind of quiet.
Okay.
I mean, I know we had like 6 views a few minutes ago. Do you find that loan officers, when they don't, do you ever, that they're not, they don't know, do you ever run across loan officers who do not know how to handle 1031 exchange, or they're just kind of confused sometimes?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways a loan officer obviously can be pulled into an exchange, right? So if it's a typical delayed exchange where the loan officer is just helping with the loan on the replacement property, then it's a more typical scenario where the loan itself is very similar to any other investment property purchase loan, right? And so as long as that loan officer understands that the down payment funds are coming out of an exchange account, or maybe they're coming out of a sale that will be closing, and the funds will be channeled to an exchange account, and at some point in time the proceeds are going to be in that exchange account, and that's where the proof of funds actually would be eventually coming from, is from us saying, yes, these funds are sitting in the exchange account and liquid and ready to go. So from a more traditional loan standpoint, an investor loan standpoint, it's pretty cut and dry. Where it gets tricky is on reverse exchanges. So we get a lot of requests for reverse exchanges, and both realtors and oftentimes lenders too are very confused by what that is, because on a reverse exchange, the party is actually purchasing the new property first and then selling the existing property. And the difference in that format is that we actually have to do what's called a parking arrangement, because the exchanger cannot be on title to what they're selling and what they're buying at the same time. Okay, that's not an exchange, that's just owning two properties,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So if a party knows that they want to purchase this property, but ultimately want to use exchange funds out of something they have not sold yet, then they actually need an accommodator like Asset Preservation Incorporated to step in as what's called an EAT, an exchange accommodation title holder. Okay. And so it's a different format where we're actually becoming the buyer for them so that we can hold title temporarily until they sell the existing property, and then take the proceeds from the existing property, channel those through the QI account, and then we can reimburse the party, either themselves if they fronted the money or the lender involved. Okay. So with that being said, the buyers are not initially on the title to the new
Like a
property.
buy before you sell.
We are,
It's like a
right?
buy
We're
before
on
you
title.
sell, huh?
Yeah, exactly. You're buying before you sell. So there's a couple things about that. Number one, if that exchanger has all the money in the world and they can buy that property first with their own funds, then they just simply lend us their money. We buy the property for them, right? We triple net lease it back to them so they have the burdens and benefits of ownership during the holding period, right? And now they have 180 days to sell their existing property, channel the funds back through the QI account so that we can reimburse it to them, and then transfer the new property to them, because now they can hold title now that they've sold the old property, right? So that's a great if the person has the resources to buy first that way. But there are many people who don't have the resources to buy first, but they'd like to buy first, right? So then they need a lender who's willing to lend to them on a purchase, knowing that it's temporary because eventually it's going to get paid back, right? So it's like a bridge loan, right? So here's where it gets complicated. A lot of lenders out there will say, oh, I can do that. I'll fund on that purchase. But what they don't understand is that the borrower is not going to be on title to that property. The entity that we've parked the property into will be on title. And so it does take a very specialized kind of lender to do that type of financing because it has to be a lender who's willing to lend to a borrower who's not on title. That's not your average bank. That's not your average, lending company, right? So we do at API, we do a lot of those. But you have to make sure that the taxpayer is using a lender who understands the parking arrangement requirement for a reverse exchange, and they're willing to lend to a party where maybe they're doing, they're leaning up against a few things of that parties in order to do that, that fund that loan. Okay. So if somebody's looking to do that and they need a list of lenders who do that type of financing, we definitely have that because we do a lot of those. And so we kind of collect the names of all those different loan officers and their companies so that we can provide that to other exchangers who are looking for that service.
Yeah, I just did a buy before you sell with New American Funding.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, they're a great
But it
company.
was for not for an investment property, but it was for like, permanent residence,
Ah,
But
yes.
yeah, but it went really smooth actually. It was like my first one. And Chris Lee, my boy over Chris Lee over at New American Funding, they just did a very good job with it,
That's
That,
awesome.
three transactions,
Yeah.
thing. So
Well,
now
and in a market where inventory is super tight, people are afraid to get into that timeline that I just showed to you when they, because if you sell first, now you're under the gun, right? And you got to
yeah.
figure out what you're buying. And depending on the market, sometimes that's really easy and other times it's really difficult, right? And so if the party wants to exchange into something that's super specific, like for example, I had somebody last week where they currently own a property it's like a vacation rental up in Tahoe. And they want to sell the Tahoe vacation rental and they want to exchange into a Hawaii vacation rental. But they very specifically want the Hawaii one to have beachfront access. They want it to be in a certain town. They want it to be a certain square footage with a certain number of bedrooms and bathrooms. And so they know that that's not going to come up every day. And so they would rather find that perfect property, buy it first, and then sell the Tahoe property because they know the Tahoe one will probably sell quickly and they don't want to sell it and not know what they're buying in, Hawaii. So it does make sense for some people if they have the resources and the bandwidth to do it, buy first so that you know exactly what you're buying before you sell. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got lucky, her property in Plymouth Lake, I got two offers in one day, so she got really
Nice.
lucky because, even with those, you're on a timeline too, because
Yeah.
she would have to start paying rent, and stuff like rent and her new,
Right. She'd have a double
yeah.
payment. Yeah. A mortgage on both houses or rent if she's moving out of a rental. Yeah, absolutely.
But no, like her house would be, well, rent would be like, because the investor buys the property, kind of like what
Oh,
you guys do, but they like give her a certain amount of day, they give you a certain amount of days before, I mean, for you to sell your property. If it's not sold, then you got to start paying them rent, you know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like
So,
so she must have been like in a seller in possession
yeah.
where,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So the new owner was renting back to her while she was,
Yeah, yeah, it was New American Funding. They put it in there, their investor gets it, she picks out the property, their investor gets to put in their name.
oh, I see. Gotcha.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, we went looking and everything. She picked the one she wanted, and yeah, they put it in their name, and then she got to move in, and then we sold her property in Plymouth Lake and got like two offers in one
Oh,
day.
nice.
So we, of course we hurt ticket because we was on a crunch line, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
she didn't want to have to wait and, and stuff. Now, I haven't seen this lately, but usually MLS, it will say seller is doing a 1031 exchange at no cost to buyer.
Mhm.
Can you explain why they put that?
They put that because I think that they want to make sure that a buyer is not fearful that somehow the 1031 exchange is going to impact them. Because there isn't a fee charged to, the other party when one party decides to do an exchange. The tax code does say that you need to notify the other party that you're doing an exchange. You don't actually need their permission, but you do have to notify them. So people do that in different ways, but we already do that as part of our documents. So we're actually disclosing that as part of our documents through the exchange documents, because there are some that go to the title company and they are put in front of the other party so that they can acknowledge it. If they refuse to sign it, we still can close using an exchange, because really the requirement is not for them to acknowledge it, but rather just be notified. But kind of going back to why a realtor might do that and put it in the MLS. First of all, the realtor is kind of giving the other party a heads up, because sometimes they will maybe build in extension rights, right? Or they might decide to, there's a form called the seller intent to exchange form. So on that form, yeah, on that form, that's also an acknowledgement. It's letting the other party know, hey, our intent is to exchange. And on that form, there's some different options. One of them could be, hey, if we don't find a replacement property, we're not selling this to you, right? Or if we don't find one in a certain time period, then we have the right to extend the timeline with you, Mr. Buyer. So there are things that a person could work into their contract to their benefit. And so when you are notifying the other party through the MLS that that's your intention to an exchange at no cost to them, part of it is you're just notifying, hey, I'm going to do an exchange. I'm going to be working this into our documents. Don't be surprised, right? And maybe they're going to be asking for contingencies or extension rights, or maybe they're not, and they're just letting you know, hey, I'm going to be doing this. But when they throw in that little comment of at no cost to you, I think they're really doing that just because sometimes when people don't know something, they have fear of it, right? And so when they see it and they're like, oh, what does that mean? Is that something that's going to apply to me? Am I going to have to pay an extra fee? The answer is no. The other party's not going to pay a fee. The exchanger pays a fee. Our company charges one flat fee that covers one sale and up to 3 replacement properties, and that fee is $1,250, and that covers you for all the exchange documents, the wire transfers, the account setup, everything. And so the exchanger pays a fee, but the other party in the contract is not paying a fee.
Yeah, okay, that's what I, well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Now, I just want to like, short answer. So why should somebody get a 1031 exchange?
It is a tax deferral strategy. So that's the benefit to doing exchange versus cashing out. However, the real opportunity is this is a way to reallocate your real estate portfolio without suffering tax implications by doing it. So
And
this allows somebody to meet their personal and financial objectives with their real estate.
okay, and you could, anybody, any state can give you a call.
Absolutely. I can help anybody with their real estate regardless of where it's located. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And my cell phone and my office line are right there on the, oops, did I
Oh
stop
yeah,
sharing?
I stopped sharing. Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So people can reach out to me, 916-621-9880, or email me at jana@apiexchange.com.
Now, all my friends on the East Coast, this is Pacific Coast time. So if it's 9 o'clock a.m. your time, that's 6 a.m. our time. So just remember that, okay? Don't
Right.
call
We
her at
got
6
people
a.m.
sleeping.
Don't
Just
call her at
remember
6 a.m. And you guys remember, if you have like a single family home, you guys can do a 1031 exchange and buy 3 more. But remember, you got 180 days from the first time, from the first one being sold.
that. Yep.
Oh, wait a minute, no, if you have a single family home, you're buying 3, right? You have to buy all 3 at the same time, okay?
No, you have to close all three
All 3 at the same
by
time.
the 180th day if you want to use exchange tax deferred funds. Exactly.
And when she said close, that means when you close on your first one, that's when the clock starts ticking, right?
Yes, if you're selling multiple and buying one, yes, you're right.
Okay.
It's The clock starts ticking when the first one closes, not the last.
In reverse, if you guys have three, you're trying to buy one, the minute the first one is sold, that's when the clock starts ticking. Okay. So it's better to kind of bundle those together. That's just my suggestion. You guys ain't got to do that if you don't want to, but that's just kind of my suggestion.
Yes.
Is to, sell it as a bundle deal and stuff. And so and what happens if if they don't meet that deadline?
Then you're paying taxes on the money.
Do they
Yeah.
still owe you you guys this fee?
So yeah, unfortunately, if the funds come to us and they go into the exchange account, that's when we extract our fee. So there, it's not an out-of-pocket cost that they're paying up front. When the proceeds come to us, that's when we extract our 1250 fee. If they start shopping for replacement properties and they don't find anything that they want to buy and they decide to abandon the exchange idea, then they still pay that 1250 fee. But depending on when during the timeline that happens, they can receive their proceeds based on what's called the G6 rules. So, do you have a second? Do you want me to go over that real quick?
You can, but I have a quick question.
Okay.
Is it 1250? Like if they have one property buying three, no, if they have three properties they're selling buying one, is it 1250 for each property or just one flat fee?
So if they're selling three and going into one, so it's a little bit different. So if you're paying the 1250 covers one sale and up to three replacements. So now if they want to add a second sale into the same exchange, then it's an extra $200 because we have to do another set of documents for that second sale. Okay. If they sell two and then they buy three, then it's just 1450, right? Because it's 1250 for the first sale and then $200 for the second one, and you get to buy up to three replacement properties. If they want to buy four replacement properties, it's another $200 for that fourth one. So just
Okay.
adding those additional properties, just add $200 for each of additional above and beyond one sale and three replacements.
Okay, cool. Now, okay, so you could go ahead and do
So I was just going to say on the G6 rules, and this is really important because sometimes people do abandon the idea of doing an exchange partway through, or they end up doing a partial exchange partway through. And so I do like people to know about the G6 rules. They do say that if you close escrow and the funds channel into the QI account, so they're held by the qualified intermediary, that's us, API, we're holding the funds. Now, say they're in their 45-day clock and they're shopping for stuff and they decided, you know what, we don't really want to buy anything. If nothing is on the list when they submit it, they say, hey, we're not identifying any properties at all on day 45, then we're allowed to return the funds to them on day 46 because they've identified nothing. Okay. And that's not our rule. That's the IRS's rule. So if on day 20, they say, you know what, I don't want to buy anything. They have to wait until day 46 to receive their money because we have to exhaust that 45-day clock and they have to list nothing on their identification form in order to receive the money back on day 46. And that's less any withholding requirements because like California does have a withholding requirement. So if we're returning funds, there might be some withholding that goes to franchise tax board. Okay. So it depends on your state, whether that's applicable. Now, if somebody lists properties on the 45th day, say they put three properties on their list on the 45th day, now they're in day 90, okay, and they decide, you know what, I don't want to buy any of those three properties. They cannot change their list to other properties. They've already identified those three, okay? Now at day 90, they say, I don't want any of those. Unfortunately, the IRS G6 rules say that if they have identified properties on their list, now they have to exhaust the entire exchange timeline, 180 days. They have to exhaust that timeline. And then on day 181, once they've bought nothing off the list, now we're allowed to return the funds to them. So there are kind of some milestones that somebody wants to be aware of because if they get into that 45-day clock and they're pretty sure they're not buying anything, they should clear their list so that they can get the money back on day 46 instead of having to wait all the way till day 181.
so you guys
Does that
still
make
get your
sense?
fee, right?
Right. We still
But
keep the fee. Yeah.
let me clear up identifying. So
Okay.
that's not writing offers, right?
It can be. Sometimes people will have written offers, but you can actually submit a list where you haven't written any offers at all yet, but you're just identifying these three properties are ones that I think I might buy. Most of the time, people have already written an offer, though. Most of the time, they're already in contract on something and they know they're buying that particular property long before they get to the 45th day.
So you're saying that they can't change
They
the
can't change it after the 45th day. So if
okay,
yeah, so if day 20, they know what they think they know what they're buying, they
or they
submit their
got
list
beat out
on,
of the offer or something.
right, right. Usually people will wait until they're really in contract on something and they're like, okay, but they have to submit a list by day 45,
Okay,
midnight of day 45.
okay,
Yeah.
makes sense. Okay, okay, that's what I was just wondering. So, okay, all right, perfect. And so, any questions for me?
You know what? Well, first of all, I mean, I'm super excited that you brought me on here to talk about this because I think it's an exciting topic and a lot of opportunity. And so I'm really glad that you brought me on. So thank you. But yeah, I mean, what's your focus right now? Are you kind of honing in on investors or first time buyers, or
Everybody,
what's your passion for right now?
everybody.
Everybody.
I do have we got 21 views now, went for 6 to
Nice.
21. All right, so people are watching, but just not commenting.
Awesome. I love it.
Um, I got a condo right now for 195, 500 for sale. But like we said, the market is just not that thing you would usually been gone like that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
this market is just it's just not what it used to be.
Yeah.
And those HOAs is really, they could, make it hard sometimes.
Yeah. Are you seeing issues with insurance related to a lot of your properties or no?
Mm-mm. Nope, no, not yet. Yeah, thank good. I don't do thank goodness I don't do like the Orvilles and
Yeah.
where either the insurance is gonna be high or they can't get insurance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but no, I haven't no problems at all with insurance and stuff. It's just the house is just sitting.
Yeah.
I had a 4 bedroom, 4 bath, um, 2-story condo in the Thomas over 100 days, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's just, I don't know if it's just condos. Like I said, that house in Plymouth Lake, I got, but they had a pool and, stuff
Mm.
like that, but it went really, really quick. But we're all seeing even homes staying on the market a little bit longer now.
Yeah. Yeah. Days on market's definitely up. I think those interest rates that's a challenge for people. The
Yeah,
payments are
but
a
when we
challenge
first,
for
I tell
people.
people, Jana, when we first started, they was what, 9%.
Yeah.
I remember I didn't even know what FHA was. Remember when FHA came back? I remember I was with the with Richard Reliantes at the members group Realty and Loans, right? And I remember being on Howe Avenue. And do you remember how all the lender reps, because back then you didn't have to have an NMLS. So people
Mhm.
were doing both, right? I only did like 2 loans back in the days. And but I remember how the loan reps used to come in. Remember how they used to always come to like Pam for Countrywide and all that,
Oh
right?
yeah, country. Oh my gosh, I forgot about
Yeah,
Countrywide.
yeah, but I just remember them coming in and beating each other out. It's like you be ready to like almost close. They're like, oh no, I can get you a better, it's just like everything's just like so, that's why we got into most of that, mess. But
Hmm.
but they used to be those reps, they used to be like dog eat dog world up, but the homes were going so quick back then,
Hmm.
and stuff. But and I remember sitting there and I was like, what's the FHA? That's when FHA first came out. And stuff, they said, oh, well, it used to be a while back, they took it away, and now they're bringing it. Yeah, so it just the times. When I was a coach at Keller, and I used to teach at night, and
Hmm.
they asked me, I used to teach at night, and they said, Alita, how did you get your clients when you started? I said, well, first of all, we didn't have no social media.
Right.
I was like, you guys are so lucky. You guys, all this social media and stuff. I said it was called going to the office and sitting down, and there was a thing called walk-ins.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just think how much change has happened since we started selling real estate versus now. It's a completely different world on
Praise
how.
God for GPS, girl, because the Thomas guys and the maps and stuff. Oh my, how do we even sell? How do we even get? Now I'm thinking, how do we even get around? Because
Right. Yeah. Well, and I remember when they first came out with the map quest, how cool that was. Like, oh wow, but you'd still have to print it out and then you'd take it in your car and and then if somebody needed to redirect to go they wanted to add a listing to the map, it was like, oh my gosh, I don't have that printed out. So then you're back to the Thomas guide trying to, yeah, it's
all you new realtors, y'all are so, 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 so lucky.
so lucky.
We used to have to charge our key, like plug, remember the you used to have a telephone jack.
About that. Yeah, you had to charge it at night, and if you didn't bring your little key that was charged, you couldn't get into the properties. That's
Yeah, then they tried the little token things. Those things didn't last. I don't think they lasted a year.
no, no.
So
There were a lot of different attempts at bringing technology to the table, and now it's just amazing, amazing. The tools that we have now are amazing.
you
It
guys
does
are
allow you to
very,
work very,
very, very lucky
very lucky.
because I can't remember how many pages I can't remember if how I even wrote my first offer. If we even had printers, I know we had printers.
We did, but you know what? They used to be, remember we'd had those bundles of the carbon
Oh yeah,
form. That's how. Yeah. So
yeah,
you'd fill out the form by hand and then you'd separate it and you'd give, you'd there was the white copy and the pink copy and the yellow copy. Remember that?
yes, I remember. Oh my goodness, that's how I wrote my first offer and stuff. Oh my goodness, yeah.
That's how.
But those
Yeah.
were the best days, you know.
Those were great days. Yeah, for
And those
sure.
and those times were the best. So yeah, so I still, market to everybody. I still, I'm with like three or four lead generation companies, you
Okay.
know, and I just got my uh NMLS to do all 50 states with a company called Real Pros. So,
Nice.
you got to have multiple streams of income,
Yes.
stuff. And being able to, be able to reach out to my, clients and stuff and, possible refi and everything. And then, plus I'm trying to be a one-stop shop, like, with the credit repair, like if they need credit, help, they can't buy a house, now we got, I'm with a company with the AI software and stuff. And, if they're trying to start a business while they're repairing their credit, we can help them with the business credit, business fund. I'm a one-stop shop for financial and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I interviewed this couple. He's a loan officer and his wife is a real estate agent. She's with Roy Machado. Now he's over there at Golden
Oh,
Bay.
yeah. I
And
remember.
I interviewed them and they said, what's just so funny is, we go to, I guess he coaches and stuff, but he goes, you know what? One of the people there, they said the name, it was one of my ex-clients. I mean, one of my clients, right? They said,
Uh-huh.
well, who was your realtor? They said, oh, Alita. And they go, oh, she's great. And she still keeps in contact with us.
She never stopped.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the thing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And given this valuable information about the 1031 exchanges, you know,
Yeah.
like, you realtors that's listening out there, if you have clients that's been talking about, buying and stuff, let them, go ahead and buy and kind of let them know, say, hey, in about two, you guys want to, is there like a time frame for when they buy it that they could do the 1031 or no? They could.
So that's a really good question. The tax code is not very clear on that. Actually, it doesn't set forth an actual timetable. But remember, it excludes anybody who's turning the real estate over for resale. So you can't use it for flipping. So a lot of people say, well, then exactly how long do I have to hold it so that it's not considered flipping, right? The tax code talks more about intent than it talks about timetables.
Mhm.
So it says your intent has to be to hold it for investment, right? Your intent can't be to buy it for resale. So If you talk to tax advisors, they'll usually guide you. So that's why we always tell people, hey, go to your tax advisor. Because if you haven't held it very long, ask them if you have documentation to prove that it was held for investment, right? Like, do you have proof of rents coming in? Do you have proof of holding costs? Do you have, maybe a lease that's signed, right? Do you have all those things that show that it's held for investment versus intent to resell? Most tax advisors we talk to say hold it for 2 full tax cycles so that you are showing those holding costs. But it really is a gray area where an investor needs to talk to their tax advisor to see what does it look like they have done? What was their intent? What did their documentation suggest?
Okay.
Yeah. I was going to tell you that I was trying to find the time that this is happening. I think it's 9:30. It might be 9. Let me see if I can find it in here. I wanted to mention I have a couple of educational events coming up at SAR and at PCAR. And if we have realtors here on this call, they might be interested in this because um, we have educational event on the new laws around listing, selling, and exchanging tenant occupied properties coming up. Yeah. So the one that I'm doing at SAR is with Keith Dunnigan
Second.
from BPE Law Firm. He and I are going to be doing an educational event at SAR. It's in the morning. It's either at 9 or 9:30. I'd have to double check, but it's on the 2nd of April. Okay, April 2nd. And then at PCAR, I'm doing it with Lauren Jones from Cronick Law Firm and a property manager from Aborn Powers and a property salesperson from Aborn Powers, and we're doing it at PCAR on April 4th. And any realtor can go to either one because there's like the member fee and then there's a guest fee. But both of them are going to be great events for anybody who wants to know what are the rules about listing a property. Like, what can you say to a tenant? Can you give a tenant notice? Can you not give a tenant notice? Can you, have an open house? Can you hang a lockbox? Can you put a sign or do you have to get their permission? Like all the things around like transferring of security deposit, prorating rents. How do you fill out an estoppel? What if the tenant installed carpet and now they're moving out and they want to take the carpet with them? Like all of those things are going to be brought up at these panel interviews. And I think that anybody who is touching properties, selling them, listing them, exchanging them, and there's tenants in them, it's a good education for an agent to be there to learn about the do's and don'ts and the horror stories around that. So I would just encourage anybody listening to, register for those classes, get there and ask the hard questions and get those
I
answers.
may be at the one on April 2nd. Is there a fee for it?
I think that
They're
that's
really
a good
cheap now, the
question.
SAR. I think it's like,
It's cheap, whatever it is. I
like
think it's like, $10 or
I
something.
thought
I'm
it
not sure,
was,
but I can I'll get the link and I'll send it to you so that you can post it.
okay.
But I know that there's like a registration thing to sign up for it. There's actually, yeah, so I just would really recommend it only because I think that there's a lot of agents out there touching those properties and they may or may not be following the laws
Yeah,
around
there's a
that.
lot of new laws, especially when it comes to tenant occupied,
Yes, a
with the
lot.
tenants' rights and everything like that. And also, she's gonna send me the link, but you look at y'all gotta start learning how to look up stuff, okay? So go to sacrealtor.org, all
There
right?
you go. Yes.
So, you learn how to do that stuff. You know what I mean? Go to sacrealtor.org and you guys should be looking at that calendar anyhow. Okay.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, that calendar has it on there for sure. And
yeah.
it is April 2nd at SAR.
And don't be like me. I got in, Robin was going to kill me at SAR at one. So I didn't know those emails. I forgot we get emails from SAR. They're called Docker or something like that, right? So and I didn't know what it was. So what, pay attention to those emails from, SAC Realtor because it is, like I said, it's called Docker or something like that. But it gives a list of all the events.
Yes.
I didn't know. I was deleting it. I didn't know what it was. Then I got mad about YPN and Robin sent it to me. I said, oh, is this what that thing is? Yeah, so it lists all the events and all the classes also. So I have to give SAR, their props. So they do email us,
They
and
do
they
email.
still got the
Yes.
website, sacrealtor.org, for you to go
Yeah.
onto the calendar. But always check your email and don't do like I
Always.
did and don't delete that thing, because it tells you about the YPN events. It tells you about the classes that's going on and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you. I know it's 8:15. I don't want to keep you away from your family too much longer.
Thank you, Alita, for having me on the call. I really enjoyed it. I hope that your friends and your clients got something out of it. And please reach out anytime. I'm
Yeah.
happy to talk one-on-one with people about their exchanges. Or if you have agents who want me to come to their brokerage to teach a class, I go out to all of the different associations on a regular basis. But I've also been going to a lot of brokerages teaching classes, and I'm going to be at the Elk Grove meeting on Tuesday. So if you know anybody in Elk Grove that wants to come, I'll be there on Tuesday.
Learning is the key.
It
Learning,
is.
it puts you above everyone else. Always stay, even if you hear things over and even if you attend her classes like 15, 20 times, you're going to get something that you didn't get before. So,
That's true.
all right.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Right.
you, and I'll
Bye,
leave this
Alita.
recording to you, okay?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it and have a great night.
All right, you too. All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.